Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, are you an offline student or an online student?
Online student.
Okay. Just let me see if I have. I will share it with you. Assignment college. Are you there in the group?
No, sir.
Yeah. Can somebody share the link of the group so that others, those who were not there, they can join? I think Rashmita is there. Rashmita, can you please share the link?
Okay, sir.
Um, I have the cover page. I will share it with you. Okay. In the group, I'll give it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Hmm. I request all of you, those who have raised your hands, please put down your hands, your virtual hands. Yeah. And please remain on mute. If you have a question, you can always put it in the chat box. Please do not disturb in between. And when I ask you, you can always ask questions. Okay. So, moving today, we will be doing Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Okay. So, Jane Austen was born on December 16th, 1775, at Steventon, Hampshire, England, and died on July 18th, 1817, Winchester, Hampshire. So Jane Austen is known, very well known as an English writer who gave the first, novel. It's distinctly modern characters through her, treatment of ordinary people in everyday life. And she published, four novels during her lifetime. Sense and Sensibility. First one, that is in 1811. Okay. Then came in 1813 is Pride and Prejudice. Then in 1814 is The Mansfield, and Emma in 1815. So in these, you find in Persuasion and Northanger Abbey, which was published in 1817, but it was published together posthumously. and she vividly depicted English middle class life during the early 19th century. Her novels, defined the era of novels of manner. So I'll tell you about the novels of manner, but they also, became timeless classics that remained critical and popular success for over 2 centuries after her death. Okay, so these work reflect her enduring legacy. Just bear with me. I'll just there's some background noise. Just if you could just wait for a few minutes. Yeah, I'm so sorry. There's some issues here. Yeah, I was talking to you about, the novel of manners. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, novel of manners. If we see that the work of this is the work of fiction that recreates a social world, conveying, with finely detailed observations, the custom, the values, and and more of the highly developed and complex society. So we find the conventions of the society which dominate the story, and the characters which are differentiated by a degree to which they measure up to the uniform standard or the ideals or behavior, or fall below it. And the range of novel of manner may be limited, as the work of Jane Austen, which deals with the domestic affairs of the English country, gentry families of the 19th century, and ignored the elemental human passions and larger social and political determinations. And you find it may also be sweeping, as in the novel of Balzac, which mirrors the 19th century in all the complexities in the stories dealing with Persian life, provincial life, private and the public life, even the military life. Okay, so then yeah. So then you find Jane Austen was born in the Hampshire village of Stevenson, where her father, Reverend George Austen, was a rector. And she was the second daughter and the seventh child in the family of the eight. Among the eight were six boys and two girls. Her closest, companion throughout her life was her elder sister, Cassandra. Neither Jane nor Cassandra, got married. And their father, who was a scholar, who encouraged, the love of learning in his children, and Cassandra was a woman of ready wit, famed for her stories, and the great family amusement was also acting. Yeah. So Jane Austen, lively and was very well. Jane Austen's lively and affectionate family circle provided a very stimulating context for her writing, and moreover, you can see her experience was, carried far beyond Stevenson Rectory by an extensive network of relationship by blood and friendship. And it was this world of the minor landed gentry and the country clergy in the village, the neighborhood, the country town, with occasional visits to Bath and to London, that she was to use in the setting characters and the subject matter of her novels. And later you find her earliest known writings date um, someone called some Giri. Do you have some problem there? Hello, Sweetie Giri, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Do you? What is it? You have some problem?
No, sir.
No, you raised your hand, your
No, sir.
virtual
By
hand.
mistakenly, I offed the. Suddenly, I offed it. By mistakenly, sir. Sorry, sir.
Okay. So, yeah. So her earliest, known writings, as I said, writing dates from about 1980, so, sorry, 1787, and between them and 1793, she wrote a large body of material that has survived in the three manuscript notebooks, volume the first, volume the second, and volume the third. And these contain, plays, verses, short stories, short novels, in fact, and other prose, and this shows, how Austen engaged in the, paradox, in the parody of existing literary forms, notably the genres of the sentimental novels and the sentimental comedy. And you find her passage to a more serious view of life, from the exuberant high spirit and the extravagances of her earliest writings, is evident in Lady Shushan, which is a short epistolary novel which was written about in 1793 to 94. And it is and no, it did not get published until 1871. So this portrait of a woman, bent on the exercise of her own powerful, mind and personality to a point of social self destruction, is in effect a study of frustration and of, women's fate in the society that has, no use for her talents. And later you find her earliest novel, which was published during her lifetime, was Sense and Sensibility, which began about in 1795, and as in novel in letters called Eleanor and Marilyn, after its heroines. But between October 1796 and August 1797, Austen completed the first version of Pride and Prejudice, and then called, it as First Impressions. It called it as First Impressions, and later you find, in 1797, her father wrote, to offer it to the London publisher for publication, but the offer was declined. And Northanger Abbey, the last, of the early novels, was written about in 1798 or 1799, probably, under the title Sushan. And in 1803, the manuscript of Sushan was sold to a publisher, Richard Crosby, for about, 10 pounds, and he took it for immediate publication. But although it was advertised unaccountably, it never, appeared. And then you find, you know um, she she was suffering from, a kind of some diseases, addiction disease. And She died on July 18th, and 6 days later she was buried. So you find the text Pride and Prejudice, additions disease. Yes, Renu? Yes. So Pride and Prejudice, describes the clash between Elizabeth Bennet, the daughter of the country gentleman, and Fitz William Darcy, who's a very rich and an aristocrat, landowner. Although Austen shows, them integrate by each other, she reverses the convention of the first impression, pride, and pride of rank and fortune, and prejudice against the inferiority of the Bennet family. Hold Darcy aloof, while Elizabeth is equally fired both by the pride of the self-respect and by the prejudice against Darcy's snobbery. So ultimately, you find that they come together in love and self understanding. And the intelligent and high spirited Elizabeth was Jane Austen's own favorite among all her heroines, and is one of the most engaging in the English literature. I hope I have introduced the author, and all of you have understood it.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Coming to the text, just a minute, I'm trying to. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about, I will tell you in brief, in summary, I'll tell you uh, is happening and all, and then I'll come to the characters. Or you want me to tell the first the characters? I'll tell you the plot um, uh, first, and then I'll come to the characters.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, yeah, in volume one, you find the Bennets and their neighbors. You know, in chapter 1 to 12, you find Mrs. Bennet of Longbourn, mother of five unmarried daughters, is delighted that young, rich, unmarried Mr. Bingley will be renting nearby Netherfield Park. Okay. So then what happens is the social visits are made and returned, and Mr. Bingley is attracted to beautiful Jane Bennet, and his wealthy friend Darcy offends her sister Elizabeth before noticing her fine eyes. And you find Bingley's, sisters invite, Jane to Netherfield, and her mother's, scheming result in her, falling ill, and so she needs to stay with them. And Elizabeth, tramps across muddy field to join her sister, and this forces her to spend time with Darcy. So you find Elizabeth Bennet is the only character who is present throughout the novel, and this is very important what I'm saying. And one way of looking at its structure is to note how she moves away from her home and family to meet new people in new settings, on journey of self knowledge, and jot down, you can just jot down what you think she has learned from, she returns home in the different volumes. Okay. So then from chapter 13 to 23, it has been said about the clergyman, Mr. Collins. Collins, who will inherit Longbourn when Mr. Bennet dies, invites himself to stay, and he proposes unsuccessfully to Elizabeth, and then is accepted by her friend Charlotte Lucas. Okay. So, and then Elizabeth, meets good-looking Mr. Wickham, who prejudices her against Darcy, and there are tense social encounters at the Netherfield ball. And then when we go to in volume 2, it's a visit to Kent, Hunsford, Parsonage, and Rossing Park. And here we see Bingley and party move hastily back to London. Jane struggles to hide her misery, and after Christmas she too goes to London to stay with Mr. and Mrs. Gardner, who was her aunt and uncle, but is ignored and then snubbed by Miss Bingley. So, and then you find in March, Elizabeth goes to stay with Charlotte and Mr. Collins at Hunsford Parsonage. And there, she meets Darcy's snobbish aunt, Lady Catherine de Bodge of Rosing Park. So and then there you find Darcy and his cousin, Colonel Fritz William, arrive, and Fritz William, reveals to Elizabeth that it was Darcy who forced Bingley to leave Jane, and Darcy then proposes to Elizabeth, and she rejects him furiously. And Darcy then writes the letter to explain his actions, and he tells her the truth about Wickham. And then you find Elizabeth returns home, and Wickham and the regiment leave the area for Brigton, and Mr. Bennet allows his youngest daughter Lydia to go to. So Elizabeth disagrees to it. And then you find in Elizabeth and Gardner go on a summer trip to Derbyshire, and they are admiring Mr. Darcy's house, Pemberley, where he appears unexpectedly. And Darcy is warmly welcoming. He introduces Elizabeth to his sister and invites Mr. Gardner fishing. And then you find Elizabeth receives the letters from Jane, and Lydia and Wickham have eloped thereby, and You find Darcy shocked and very sympathetic. So Elizabeth realizes that this and the, means they have Lydia and Wickham have eloped, and then Elizabeth releases how her feelings towards him have changed, but assumes the relationship is over. And she and the gardeners hurry home to deal with the crisis. And then you find here Mr. Gardiner writes from London announcing that Wickham has agreed to marry Lydia. So it is obvious that he has been paid, to do this. And Lydia and Wickham arrive at Longbourn after their wedding, and Lydia, lets slip that Mr. Darcy was at the ceremony. So Mrs. Gardiner, tells Elizabeth privately that it was Darcy who paid, Wickham, and you find Bingley, returns to Netherfield. He and Darcy, come to visit the Bennets, and it is, not long before Bingley proposes to Jane and she accepts. Are you all getting me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then later, what happens is, Lady Catherine de Bourgh visits Longbourn and tries to, force Elizabeth to promise that she will never, marry Darcy. So Elizabeth refuses to be bullied, uh, and Darcy and Elizabeth, you find, finally, have a chance to talk privately, and she thanks him for saving, Lydia, and he proposes to her again, and she accepts. So Mr. Bennet is worried that Elizabeth is marrying without love or respect, and she is able to reassure him. And the weddings of Elizabeth to Darcy and Jane to Bingley takes place on the same day. So Elizabeth is glad, when she can finally, escape Longbourn to live in, Temberley, and it is not long before, Jane and Bingley decide to follow her to Derbyshire. So this is, what happens at the in all the volumes. So you find that um, just a minute. Yeah. So Jane Austen, sets Pride and Prejudice in a very narrow social world of gentry families in the upper class, but not titled, and whose main activity seems to be socializing with each other, and it is a world very similar, though not very identical, but to the world in which she lived herself. So you find, why are these chapters very important? You know, because they establish, they talk about the importance of marriage and money as the central theme, and it suggests an element of social competitiveness. Okay, I forgot to ask actually, how many of you have read Pride and Prejudice?
I've read it, sir. I have
Okay,
read it.
okay, I can see some one, two, three, four, five, six. Some 10 people have read. Okay, could you connect to what I said?
Yes, sir, we could.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sorry, but you gave us a new perspective when you mentioned the fact that she had, gone out because we never thought of it from that angle. That she went out and she, went on to so many places, and it was like a journey of self-discovery of sorts. So the
yes,
way she
yes.
started, that was not the kind of perspective we had in mind.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I was talking about, why these chapters are important. So, um, um, it talks about the central, theme, which gives an importance to marriage, and money. And it is an element of social, competitiveness. Because if you see, money is always a source through which we start competing with each other, isn't it? Means if we
Yes,
talk
sir.
about today's situation, people are, you know if we talk about family and money, people choose, they not don't choose, rather we can say that it has, the social structure has become such that, people run after money. They forget that there's something called a family, a social structure which exists. And yeah, we are introduced to Bennett's household and, the incompatible characters of Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. And Mr. Bingley is, introduced. So, and the other neighbors also. And yes, in the first chapter, stylistically, it offers a mix of, ironic comment by the narrator and revealing the dialogues within the, family. So you find, uh, I was talking about marriage and money. So, in page one, yeah, it is mentioned that it is truth universally acknowledged. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I repeat, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Okay. There are some hands raised. Ravindra, do you have anything to ask? Ravindra, Ravindra Sethi, do you have anything to ask?
No, sir. Sir, no, sir, namaskar.
Yes.
Sir,
Uh,
sir,
uh,
wrongly.
okay,
Uh,
okay, okay, okay. Please, you can just, yeah, put your
okay, sir.
virtual hands down so that,
Oh,
Simran, do you have something to ask? No. Okay. Renu?
So I wanted to ask how the
Yes.
books compare to each other. how like Jane Austen's different books could be like compared to each other.
No, no, I didn't get. Sorry.
I was curious to how the different books that Jane Austen has written may compare to each other. Like what would be the themes in common and yeah.
Uh, See, because when you are were you not there when I told you gave the introduction?
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically, when we are writing about, means what do you want to know? Means or what writings uh, uh, means what were the themes that Jane Austen was taking. That is what you're asking.
Yes, sir. Yes.
See, there are many things. As I said, that uh, Jane Austen, if you see, was more, towards, was towards, the the responsibility, the duty to society, the a person, people uh, showing the seriousness towards the religion, morality, which were characterized, by manners. All these were, how, Austen was working on in her novels. So you find, um, misperceptions, even the, importance of marriage, which she has, reflected in the novel. And yeah, and you find she was using, very indirect discourse, while the style of writing which that, she was blending, while narrating, with the different perspectives of the character. Could I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So, hello. Am I
Yes,
audible?
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I was talking about.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Meenakshi.
Sir, you were talking about some ironic comment before this line. It is a truth universal acknowledged. I couldn't get that thing. Ironic comment. What
No,
is
no, I
that? Can you
was
please
telling,
repeat?
the ironic comment which, when you read the chapters, you will find how, Jane Austen has written. That is what I was trying to tell. The writings of Jane Austen, while, approaching in the first chapter, you will find the way ironic comments by the narrator. That is what I was telling.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so you find I told that line, that it is truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So this first sentence, introduces us the central theme in the novel, and you find the importance of marriage and its connection with money and property. Okay, so I would give you I'll tell you about the connections of that. And so you find Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, they have five daughters, and Mrs. Bennet's only concern the only concern was in life was to see them married, whom the all the daughters. And you find that was her business. That was her business, means her she her perspective uh, of after her daughters was like to keep to put them in a better place, get them married, and be in a better place. And at this point in the novel, Austen does not tell the readers that the girls and their mother will be, homeless after their father's death if they do not gain their own establishments. Right? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure those who have read this, they must be,
Yes, sir. It is
Yes, sir.
related to the
Yes, sir.
law of those times that once the father passes away, the property will pass on to the either the son or to the nearest male relative, and not to
exactly.
the daughters.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So, you find that, the mother was more concerned about the daughter's settlement. So, and that you will find in chapter 22. You will find this, exactly about the establishments which has been, mentioned. And as a narrator, she's critical of Mrs. Bennet's and sympathizes with Mr. Bennet's, sarcastic teasing. These chapters also establish the strict social convention that, governs this small world. And Mrs. Bennett's comments about Mrs. Long, which reveals the potential competitiveness and um, the self-seeking, beneath the surface of politeness. And so, therefore, you find that Mr. and Mrs. Bennett were the key characters. Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Sir, could you please repeat once again? I couldn't
Yes,
follow
sir.
you.
No, what I was telling is, um, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett were one of, they were the key characters in this novel.
Sir, I
Yes.
think
Yes, sir.
sir,
No, sir. I think the Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, they are the key characters
Key characters. Why do you think so?
because it is discussed all about both of them, and how their relationship was from the beginning and how it turns into another relationship. From the beginning, it was discussed in
Yes, sir,
every
because the
step.
whole
Okay. Okay. Yes, Dipshika.
um sir,
But sir, the
yes,
Please raise your hand. I will ask.
sir, actually the whole novel revolves around their
Mm-hmm.
relationship, the growing relationship. Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Actually,
you
the
mean
whole
to
novel
say,
revolves around the growing relationship.
okay. So you mean to say that Mr. and Mrs. Bennett were somewhere not, the key characters in the novel.
So I have a different opinion on this. Because we see, a lot of
Just a
sir,
minute.
sarcasm.
I will allow you. Please do not interrupt in between. Yes, yes, Preeti. Please go ahead.
So I was saying that, we can see from the very beginning how sarcastic Mrs. Bennett was. I mean, they had a good relation, but then, uh, I mean, both had different perspective, and they both came together in the marriage and the like the scenario of the Victorian times. Uh, like it was one. I mean, the financial status was of utmost importance. So and that gets reflected in Mr. and Mrs. Bennett's life too. And so also like Mr. Bennett, he always tried to encourage Elizabeth, whereas Mrs. Bennett on the other hand, she also loves her daughter, but then she has that opinion of I mean she's a bit partial towards her daughters.
Of course,
So
that is what it is reflecting, because she wanted that the daughter should be placed in a good, they could get married and they could, be placed in a good place. Yes, Uttara.
sir, I haven't completed the novel yet. I've started
Okay.
few days back. So
Okay.
whatever I feel is in my opinion, they play a kind of, so far whatever I've read, they play a kind of crucial role because her mom was not nagging the children unnecessarily, because she was actually living the reality of women facing, the kind of problems if they don't get married at that age. Like you said, if the father passes away, the entire inheritance will go to some other person. Even she can't inherit the
Yes.
property. So her constant worry,
Yes.
and then she doesn't have a son. She had five daughters, and they were all of very young age. It is mentioned that only Elizabeth and Jane they are in the marriageable age. So her constant worry, if one of them will get married, then she can actually settle down the others also in a way before everything gets complicated. So I felt that the pressure was more on her. We could see that the society, from her perspective, from their perspective, yes, he was Mr. Bennett. I got really annoyed at certain points, but then he is a very practical person, but he fails to understand what if something happens to him, the reality will strike only the ladies in the family. So that way I felt that even
And
though
and
it
and
is
you
a
and you
novel revolving around.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. Yeah. No, no. See, what you said is true, and about, but the law was such, nobody could do anything about it. So, if you
Yeah,
see Mrs.
I
Bennett's,
have
go
read
ahead.
I have read Jane Austen's
Please go
Sense and
ahead.
Sensibility, and even in that novel, you could see the same thing, the same dispute, like property issues will be going on. So I could relate to that both novels. Then I understood that her mom's perspective, that she is kind of the person who is living in that reality, and she is worried about her girls. So I felt that no matter what the development of the character is or romance between two protagonists, these are the characters will actually make us understand the background of the particular period. So I feel that's why they are the
Correct.
key
Correct.
characters in this. Thank you, sir.
Correct. Correct. Yes, Sridas.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
please.
sir, my understanding from Pride and Prejudice is the whole theme of this novel revolves around love and marriage, and
Mhm.
mostly it is not just uh, following the growth or development of love and marriage between uh, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, but it also shows, in comparison, the other marriages in the novel as we see through the author's eyes. The marriage of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Collins and Charlotte Lucas, or even Wickham and Lydia. So, what she's trying to portray is how marriages uh, can happen over many topics, as in uh, it can happen from love to marriage, or it can be a kind of a contract, like there is a situation, the circumstance which will not allow a woman to lead a normal life, so they will come to the understanding to get married, which happens for the case of Charlotte Lucas. So I think this is the factor which will make them a key character in this novel. It is just not about uh, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy just because of this reason. So she's trying to portray all these marriages just to show us what different marriages really represents.
Okay, okay, yeah. I appreciate you putting all your points. I will also come. I will come with my point. Yes, Mazda Karim, do you have something to say?
Yes, sir. I think that
Yes.
Jane Austen has is transporting us to the society she lived in, and she's reflecting the ways the women they used to live, and how women have to had to explore and no, it's not exploring, but exploiting. I think that the arranged
Okay.
marriages they uh, they uh, they guarantee for them a favorable social standing and economic security. So I think that Austin is
Yeah, yeah.
exploring.
Somewhere you are correct. Somewhere
Yes,
I also agree to that. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
Austin
please. Yeah, yeah.
I think Austin is exploring the dependence of women on marriage for the pursuit of favorable social standing and economic security, and she's reflecting this through the characters and how they think about after their father is dies, what happens to them. So they need to find a way out. So I think that
So
according
yeah,
to
that
the
is why that is why Mrs. Bennett was somewhere very concerned about the daughters.
Yes, so this is why they always think about finding a way how they will guarantee their, let's say, upcoming life, how they will stay in the same level or get in another level of the society. Means that if she's from the middle class, she can become in the upper class. If she gets married, if she gets married to someone who has money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But Preeti, I couldn't get you what you wrote on the chat box. Could you please?
So I was asking if it could be said that like Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, they both acted as a foil to their daughters, and to be in-laws, to be uh, yeah, I think son-in-laws.
Okay, 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 okay. So let me come to the point of what I would like to share with you. Okay, so this novel about marriage opens with a marriage that is clearly not a happy one. Okay, why? Because Mr. Bennett's teasing of Mrs. Bennet could be read as a affectionate in a different context. But the narrator soon, makes it clear that the husband and wife are not are incompatible. Have you did you notice that?
Yes,
Any
sir.
one of you?
Yes, sir, but in
Yes,
a
sir.
way,
Yes,
yes, we did, because she's the one who's always talking about marriage, and he's the one who completely keeps himself away from this kind of talk. Though he
Yeah.
does at certain points of time, especially during the end, and when he goes to meet Bingley, and though his wife has told him that she would like to introduce Jane to Bingley, and he says that he hasn't, but finally he does it without her knowledge.
Yeah.
And
And
later on also he loves Elizabeth so much that when he comes to know that she's taken a decision to get married to Darcy, and he
mm,
makes sure that she is marrying for love and not for any other reason. And he also says he has means I think he tears up, or he's sad that his daughter is leaving him because she is the one whom he loves the most. So he has a different way of loving his children, and the mother has a different way of loving her children. So it's like both the parents are concerned in a way, but yes, amongst the two of them, I feel that they could have been better. They are not so compatible as they should have been, or
no,
he
no, it
should
is
not be teasing
mentioned.
the woman.
The narrator has mentioned that, in the text, the narrator says the experience of 3 and 20 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Okay, the experience of 3 and 20 years had made insufficient to make his wife understand his character. So the dialogue shows, Mr. Bennet using his cleverness to make a fool of her in front of their, children. And he shows his, very contempt where he, leaves the room, fatigued and by her, raptures. And the narrator describes him as, so odd a mixture. This is the phrase in the text, so odd a mixture. But yes, shows no sympathy at all for Mrs. Bennet, who is condemned as a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. Okay. Did you get
Yes, sir.
me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, yes, yes. Sorry, I didn't get you. Okay. Uh, so if you look at the writing styles, I told you about the irony. The first sentence that contains powerful words and phrases, such as I told you the first sentence. Do you remember the first sentence?
It is a truth
Yes, it is the
universally
truth.
acknowledged.
Yes, yes. That a single man in possession of a good
Possession of a good
fortune
fortune, want of a wife.
must be, yeah, in want of a wife. So you see, the words and phrases like truth, universally acknowledged, and must, 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 you know these are some powerful words and phrases, and the force of these words is undercut by the acknowledgement of ignorance, however little known. Okay. And then you also find, the characteristic speech rhythm that Mrs. Bennet, tends towards exclamations and assertions, while Mr. Bennet usually, seems to prefer calm statements. And we also see the narrator's voice. The narrator's voice used to describe and condemn as in the contemptuous, uh, adjectives which are applied to Mrs. Bennet, like mean, little, uncertain, all these. words which are being used for Mrs. Bennet. Yeah? Are you all getting me?
Yes, sir,
Yes, sir.
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this is, I told you about chapter 1 and 2. I will not be able to finish, the full chapter, but I'll just go through whatever is there. I will talk to you. Okay, then we have this Pride and Prejudice as one of the reflection by the author. Uh, a bad first impression may lead to prejudice. And Elizabeth, you find the heroine, is clever enough to recognize this, but does not necessarily act on it. And that is what it has been said in the text. I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine. Line number 14, page number 14. And her sister Jane, however, would wish not to be too hasty in censuring anyone. So the concept of pride is shown to be complex. It can refer to good self-esteem as well as to arrogance. So the different characters have points of view appropriate to them. For example, we can say Charlotte focuses on Darcy's family position, and Austen uses the social setting of the ball to show how changeable and how harsh public opinion can be. Where she has mentioned his character was decided. He was the proudest, most disagreeable man in the world. And it also shows how women were forced to be passive and wait for men to judge their attractiveness. Am I clear? Are you getting me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So then you see, the second impression, the key, as you see, there was also, um, you find Jane Austen tried to reflect marriage as an economic necessity, which has been discussed by Charlotte and Elizabeth from different perspectives. So you find problems between Jane and Bingley due to Jane's habit of concealing her feelings and foreshadowed. So you find Darcy's physical response to Elizabeth is forcing him to reconsider his first impressions, and she, however, is much slower to think again. So the irony that has been set as a key language, on the surface you find Charlotte and Elizabeth's discussion on Jane is a gossip between friends. And if you look closely at what Charlotte is saying, however, she uses words like disadvantage, opportunity, fixing, secure, all these, so these all, which reveals her hard-headed strategic approach to getting, married. And it is an example of a narrative irony where Elizabeth says, you would never act in the way yourself. And this is what, in fact, it is exactly how Charlotte acts, later in the story. So Elizabeth has to learn that even friends, may not be what they seem to. Clear? So it is very important that we must analyze the characters' actions. So you must have noticed that how Austen achieves most of her effects by her careful choice of words. It is very important. and her use of dialogues and her narrators comments. She also positions herself inside a character's head and uses words to convey the thoughts. Her Here you find Mr. Darcy is shown reconsidering his opinion of Elizabeth. And in addition, you see Austen uses body language when character is not being rational. So so you find in the chapter, Darcy is caught by the easy playfulness of Elizabeth's manners, and is drawn towards her almost against his will. And such movements are often Austen's mean of suggesting unconscious sort of sexual attraction. Am I clear?
So, yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Yes, somebody.
So, could you
Yes.
please repeat the last sentence, sir?
Which one?
Like the last statement that you made, like sexual something,
Or
something. I don't, I couldn't get it.
Austin was, trying to, uh, to all these things, basically from the body language. Okay. So all these movements, Austin was trying to suggest that these were all sexual attraction which was unconsciously done.
So, body
Clear?
movements like for example.
When as I said, when they were not, which was the body language when the characters were not being very rational. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when the characters were very not very rational, through their body language they were expressing that. That is what Austen was trying to reflect, that through the body language they were trying to uh, you know uh, show the sexual attraction towards another person or another partner.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so coming to the next, in chapter 7 to 9, it has Austin has talked about the country life, reflected about the country life, and talks about the four five families in the country village is the very thing to work on. And that was the world in which she herself lived. And these chapters gave some insights into the dullness of country life in winter, especially for the women, and the practical difficulties of getting about. And you see families were forced together, particularly in the evenings, and this could put strain on relationship, and the even the strong impact on the social life was very quiet in the country town. So you see characters often reveal themselves by their attitude to reading. And we noticed that there was an exchange between the different characters with their thought process. And then you find you know Caroline Bingley was another very important, means it was a character, key character in chapter 10, where you find an author who can develop main characters by showing them in relationship to others. And here find Caroline Bingley is a minor character. Interrupts Darcy with constant flattery as he tries to write a letter, and we are implicitly invited to contrasts this with Elizabeth's weakness of thought and the independent spirit, and Darcy is very polite but also determined, and we can see that he's a very strong personality in order to flatter him, and Caroline is prepared to uh, you know um, hello, hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
uh, can you hear me? Hello. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
So,
yes, so I was telling you, Caroline is very is prepared, to denigrate, her own brother, criticizing his careless letter writing, and Bingley, response, shows his gentle nature, and Elizabeth is unexpectedly tactful as she tries to soothe possible hurt feelings. So here we see Austen is trying to introduce the narrative moments that reveals a great deal about relationship, status, and power. So we find, considering that how Darcy, perceives the Bingley sisters' rudeness when, they turn on a path which is too narrow to, allow Elizabeth to walk beside them. And this simple event is both, poignant and, telling in terms of plot and characters development. Uh, you see, in chapter 11, 12, comedy plays an important role. Are you all getting me?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Pride and Prejudice can be, considered as a comic novel. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Not really, sir.
yes, sir. I agree.
Okay. Priti, why
So
so?
I also agree.
Sir, actually, I would say it is something, it's full of comparisons. There is always somebody, there's always a foil to each character. That is something that is overpowering when I look at it from my perspective. Funny means comedy, exactly no, because even in the comedy that they try to introduce using Mrs. Bennet, I think that comes across as something negative. It's not something that you can laugh at. You feel pity for the lady, or you can feel irritated as to why the lady is so hell bent on getting her daughters married. But I didn't find any comic, anything so comic.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, Dipshika.
Sir, actually, in literature, the word comic we use for a happy ending, and this particular novel has a definitely a happy ending. So I think it can be called a comedy, a
Okay.
prism,
Yes,
a
Shri.
very good and roundabout ending.
Yes, Shri.
Sir, comedy has been used with Austen's wit and irony. I think many of the statements or
Mm-hmm.
quotes that we see or conversations we see by the characters are full of ironical in nature, and also some of the characters are very comical in their essence, like Mr. Collins himself.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, definitely we can say it's a comedy.
Okay. Uttara, yes, Uttara.
Sir, I could very well relate to that. Whatever, it's my personal experience. I come from a very patriarchal society, so women, mostly the elder women in my family, like my mom, my grandparents, were all like I could relate them to Mrs. Bennett because the men in my family are mostly like, including my own brother, is like Mr. Bennett, men of few words, and I had fun reading those things because I could actually see it's not just happening
Relate
in
them.
that period, but they, yeah, I
Yeah,
could
you
very
could
well
relate them.
relate them to my own personal. So I felt it is very crude. Like in a way, I felt very pity for Mrs. Bennett because since I am living with this kind of people, I felt like men are men are like this even in that period or now, and women they cannot just say it anything upright properly. They just keep spinning. And what I felt so annoying about Mrs. Bennett is she gets lost in lots of description rather than telling anything in point, and they get married to a person
Yes.
who actually need that kind of only facts. So it is like pathetic. Like I can see that kind of situation in my family. I live with such couple is my mom, dad. So I could very well relate. My husband is
Okay.
same, and I talk a lot. So I had fun reading that. It is a very pathetic situation for that woman, but I could relate it to that. So that way I felt it's kind of comedy. She could actually bring the reality into that novel. Through that novel, I felt that this is a piece where you can relate with that character. It felt funny for me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, nice. Sometimes when we can relate it to the present, position, so you can, you get more relevance to what you are reading. Yes, Mazda.
Yes, sir. I think this novel is a comic because I found the relationship between the husband and wife and the situations when they talk, and we can depict the difference between them and the gap. There is a gap between the way of thinking and how they see things, and how this wife wants her daughters to get married. And in another way, also, I see it's a comic because it's a romance. I think it's a romance. This novel is a romance, like the romance that Balzac and other authors they wrote in France. That this story ends up with marriage between the heroine and the two protagonists, in fact, and
Okay.
it ends in a happy way. um, I see also that the rudeness of Caroline, uh, her rudeness, it doesn't fit the social status that her social status. So this makes her.
So don't you see that there's a sense of humor in the part of Elizabeth throughout the text?
What did you say?
I said, reflecting Elizabeth's, sense of humor throughout the text.
I think that Elizabeth is a like, this is my own opinion. In fact, I think she's thinking the way the writer is thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Means that she
Renu,
does not.
I saw your chat. Mr. Collins is a comical character. Very correct. Uh, uh, I will send you the comical character. I'll send you a PDF. You can go through that in the group, in the WhatsApp group. I'll send today after the class. So you find, Pride and Prejudice can be considered as a comical novel. So sometimes it is the narrator's comment that underlines, the gap between what a character says and what she or he does. So you can see an example can be of this is Caroline, Bingley, struggling to read the second volume of Darcy's chosen book, and she's constantly stopping and interrupting. And finally, you see it's written in the lines goes like this: She gave a great yawn and said, "How much sooner one tries of anything that than a book." She then yawned again, threw aside her book, and cast her eyes around the room in search of some amusement. Okay, and then you find a sense of humor is a part of Elizabeth's personality, where it's these lines are from the text. I quote: "Follies and nonsense, whims and inconsistencies do divert me, I own, and I laugh at them whenever I can." So her half, laughing argument with Darcy, might lead the readers, to guess that she is more attracted to him than, she realizes. So you find that Austen was trying to enable her readers to see what is happening before a character is aware of it. Basically in this chapter 12. And then you find, uh, yes, a patriarchal society which is reflected, and you find, today it would be almost unthinkable for Mr. Collins to be, legally able to, inherit the Longbourn estate, and make Mrs. Bennet and her daughters homeless just because he's a male. And you find, all the property going to the oldest son, which was an unusual, sorry, a usual in Jane Austen's time. But Lady Catherine de Bourgh's family chose to be outside the male inheritance society, and she is hardly an admirable example. So you find male inheritance is a very hard economic fact that makes it so important for the girls to find husbands. And Mr. Collins is right to say that his cousin's beauty will help them uh, be well disposed of in marriage. So every member of the Bennett family, reacts to the, this sort of new arrival, that is Mr. Collins, which is in an entirely characteristic way. Okay, so we also find the aspect of the character development and the evidence what Austen's comic viewpoints, and Pride and Prejudice is full of humorous examples of people behaving predictably, which could challenge the way of people's behavior. And then we also see appearance and reality, um, thinking about the gap between the appearance and reality, which could lead to a richer understanding of characters, even the style and the events in Pride and Prejudice. And much later in the story, Elizabeth contrasts Wickham and Darcy, where when she is talking to Jane, and you find in Wickham was introduced there. Wickham, by introducing the two new characters, Mr. Colin and Mr. Wickham, so close together in the story that Austen, would have expected readers to contrast the two men, just as Elizabeth and her sisters do. But however, you find while the narrator, makes it perfectly clear that Mr. Collins is a pompous, caricature, and there is, no guidance at all about Wickham. So, comparing this to the way that the other eligible bachelors, Bingley and Darcy, who have been introduced. So there has been you can say detailed information about their income, the family, the personalities, and about Wickham. There is nothing. No, you do not have any information about him. Uh, yes, family. Austin tried to show family as a social unit, um, and you find the you know the way he also talked about Mr. Collins as she also talked about Mr. Collins as a caricature, because Austin presents Mr. Collin as a caricature rather than a rounded human being whose feeling might be hurt by Elizabeth's rejection. Though his pride was hurt, he suffered in no other way. Although he presents himself as a generous about money, that the fact that he mentions it at all in a proposal of marriage and is also revealing. Um, he says, I quote those lines: "It is by no means certain that another offer of marriage will ever be made you. Your portion is unhappily so small that it will, in all likelihood, undo the effect of your loveliness and amiable qualifications." So, interpreting Elizabeth there also demands for you find for the demands for respect. So have any one of you read a vindication of the rights of women?
No,
Any?
sir.
No. Okay. um, A Vindication of Rights of Women was published in 1792, and if we relate Austen's text to that text, we don't know exactly what Austen thought about women's right, but it is significant that Elizabeth, our heroine, demands to be taken seriously as a person and not dismissed or patronized because of her gender. That is what she also mentions in the text. "Do not consider me now as an elegant female, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart." So we could contrast the style of Mr. Collins' long winded sentences with Elizabeth brief forceful unambiguous statements. So these are some of the things. Yeah, marriage and family is again one very important part, which Austen has reflected. Class, class, uh, where the key character. Uh, Means class was one of the key themes, you can say, because class became more obvious as the novel progresses, and the gardeners and the trades people, this allows Carolyn Bingley to despise them automatically, although her brother shows his good heartedness by saying that this is nothing to do with Jane and Elizabeth. And the Bingley sisters, prefer to, forget that their own fortune originally came from trade. So, Mr. Darcy's money comes from land, and so does Mr. Bennett's. And the gardeners, however, represent honesty, good sense, good manners, and true gentility. So, Mr. Darcy recognizes these qualities as soon as he finally meets them in person. So. Um, then you also find Darcy and Elizabeth are, you know, um, where, in the last chapter, in chapter number 8 to 10 in volume 2, you find that Elizabeth enjoys a lively and intelligent conversation with Colonel Fitzwilliam, which attracts attention from Mr. Darcy and Lady Catherine, and Mr. Darcy moves away from Lady Catherine to listen to Elizabeth. Piano playing, and Darcy and Elizabeth tease one another as they talk with Colonel Fitzwilliam. And Mr. Darcy, visits the parsonage when Elizabeth is alone and he is awkward and silent. And you find Colonel Fitzwilliam takes, care of and to, warn Elizabeth that he needs to marry someone wealthy. And he also, tells her that Darcy recently, saved his friend Bingley from a most, imprudent marriage. So the theme of marriage as an economic arrangement is mentioned by Colonel Fitzwilliam, who is aware that he has come close to flirting with Elizabeth, and she's privately embarrassed by, but manages to make a joke of it, and says and pray, what is the usual price of an earl's younger son? And you find the story based on the story structure. You find Colonel Fitzwilliam would not have told Elizabeth about Darcy's interference between Bingley and Jane at a worse moment. So the upper class society, which was reflected here, he seeing how easily Elizabeth talks to Colonel Fitzwilliam, evidently, gives Darcy confidence in his romance, and he sees that Elizabeth is well able to, cope up with the upper class society. So that is why, at this moment in the novel, she does not understand what a serious obstacle her family is. Okay, so when writing about the marriage theme. Colonel Fitzwilliam should be, mentioned, and it is surprising to discover that he too will be, marrying for money. So his obvious admiration for Elizabeth may help convince the readers as well as Darcy how genuinely attractive and charming she was, or she is. Okay. So that's all about today's text that I have to, I had to tell you. I hope all of you have, you know, um, tried to connect to what I have said.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I said, yeah, yeah. Yes. So, any further discussions? Did you all understand? Yes, Mazda?
Yes, sir. I have a comment about the title Pride and Prejudice. Can we say that pride refers to Elizabeth and prejudice refers to Darcy, to Mr. Darcy? In a
Yes.
way, uh, sorry to interrupt you,
Yes,
in a
yes.
way that we say that Elizabeth represents the virtue, the good manners, and the she contrasts the upper class when, like the hypocrisy of upper class, for example, of Caroline, and her way of talking with her and belittling her, and she's not although she's from the upper class, so she's acting with a prejudice on about the lower classes.
Yes, yes. If you want a text regarding relating to this, I will send you. I have a PDF relating to this appropriateness of the title. I will send you in the group. Are you there in the group?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll send you in the group. You can go through that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so I hope all of you are, getting some benefit out of the class. It's out
Yes,
of
sir.
the discussion and all.
Absolutely, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Uh,
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so tomorrow, I think tomorrow we have a class. Yes. Please read Wuthering Heights.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Wuthering Heights.
Okay, sir.
So can you tell please what did you do yesterday? I could not attend the class.
Yesterday we did Tom Jones,
All,
Henry Fielding's Tom Jones. Yeah.
all right, sir. Do you have any recording to share for that, sir, or anything else which could
It
help
is
me?
there in the chat. Link is there in the chat.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Good night, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Good night,
Thank
sir.
you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Sir,
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
sir,
Yes. Yes.
Sir, actually, I wanted to ask you yesterday itself, but I joined late, so I couldn't. Actually, we are recording the class. Is that okay with you, sir? Last two classes, like MEG-1, MEG-1, MEG-2, we took permission and we are recording. Since some of us, some of them are actually working and they couldn't attend the class, professors told us to record and share it in the group.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
There's
okay with you?
absolutely there's not a problem. If you record this and you can
Thank you,
get
sir.
some benefit out of it, there's no problem.
We are
Absolutely, there's no problem.
Yeah, sir. Some students are not able to attend the class due to their work. So we are uploading it in the drive and we are sharing that link to the students. So they are checking out whenever they get free.
Yes.
So I just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure, sure. That's not a problem.
thank you, sir. I was thinking about asking you yesterday for your consent. So sorry, sir, for the
No,
late.
no, 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 no. It's not a problem. You can do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
sir.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye
sir.
bye.
Thank you, sir.